they rolled them off.
And I'll give you Return to Learn.
And you just upgraded each
And
year
you'll go
with
from there.
the engine or whatever. Yeah, they're coming out with a flat version.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, February 8th Muscatine Community School District Board meeting. Madam Secretary, would you do roll call and determine a quorum for us, please?
Director Cooney.
Here.
Grubba.
Here.
DeBeat.
Here.
Finn.
Here.
McCarter.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Sure.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Tonight, I'm going to ask if you will join in the Pledge of Allegiance. It's going to be led by our Muskie wrestling team. Part of the team has already made a trip to state. The other part of the team is anxiously awaiting. We have all fingers and toes crossed that they too will be headed to state. They've had a great season, and we appreciate that we've had so many groups that have been able to lead us virtually in the pledge. So if you would stand with me, and we will wait for them to kick us off. With a little musky spirit at the end. We like that. We have a special addition to our board this evening, and that is we have added student representatives to the school board, which we are very excited to have. I will pass it to Clint to make those introductions.
Well, as you know, this is something we've talked about since I first interviewed for the position, and really trying to get as much student voice in the process as possible. And so tonight I'm happy to introduce 3 representatives that will be serving us through the rest of this year. So as you know, as we kind of talked about in concept, we would have a junior and senior. And by the time we got this up and running, we were kind of at a position, if we did just a junior and senior, in a couple of months we'd be coming back and doing it again. So it made sense to just go ahead and get a sophomore, a junior and senior, and we'll transition our junior and sophomore into their roles for next year as well. So I also want to say thank you to Tammy and Denny and Aaron, who did the screening interviews for this. And then Lisa and I met with the students on Friday to talk a little bit more about the process. So with that, I want to introduce Alexis Moeller. She's our senior representative on the board, Dylan Metzger as a junior, and Gabriel Salazar as a sophomore. So what they'll be doing as they come into meetings, and this is part of what we talked about, is just reaching out, connecting with leadership at the high school and our other buildings, activities, student council, and sharing some of the great things that are happening across the district from a student's perspective. And they also know that the expectation is they participate in the conversation. So as we talked Friday, tonight we'll be spending some time on the Return to Learn plan and the secondary transition to full in-person. And I expect either questions to them or some comments from them about how that affects them, the conversations they've had with some of their teachers, with some of their friends, with their parents, and really as much as possible just to be a part of this process. So it's important to have their voice, and I'm really excited to have all 3 of them here with us tonight. So welcome.
Thank you. Well, welcome again. Your cohorts up here, we are excited to have you join us. So thank you for being able to dedicate the time to do that. The next thing on our agenda is our MHS Student Council update. And perfect. Gabriel, I didn't know if you were going to do that or not. You no longer have to go to the podium. You just have to lean into that mic, my friend.
All right. Good evening. We are very excited to say that we are hosting a modified senior survivor this year, the week of March 1st through the 5th. The event will be adapted this year to meet COVID guidelines. Students will not be staying overnight at the school, but they will be here every day from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Students will compete in challenges in the morning, throughout the school day, and in community challenge events during the evenings of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the week. We have 5 teams signed up for the events, which include the following, along with their charities of choice. And excuse me for any names that I mispronounce. Caden Roberts and Kaylin Salyers for the Environmental Defense Fund, Gwen Cool and Dose for MCSA, Giselle Martinez and Trevor Diedricks for Domestic Abuse Shelter, Erica Ramser and Xander Morgan for Children's Cancer Recovery Fund, and Hannah Pounce and Christian Schlavin for Rebuilding Together. The students have started fundraising, which will go into their final score for the competition, and we are excited to give you an update on how the events are going. Also, we are excited to announce our prom date for this year. Prom will be held for juniors and seniors outside at MHS on Saturday, May 1st. Masks will be required, and we are working out the logistics with the building administration of what the events will entail. More information will be provided at the board at next month's meeting. Thank you.
What questions do you have for Gabriel? Clint, you're missing the opportunity to spend the night at MHS during Senior Survivor, because traditionally that's the superintendent gets to do that one evening.
Sorry to hear that. New year, new traditions, right?
And hopefully we have a lot nicer weather by May 1st for prom. But how exciting that you all are working on some ways to continue some of these important traditions and finding ways to do them safely. So thank you for that. And I know your peers thank you as well. As much normalcy as we can find is a beautiful thing. All right, our next agenda item is Citizen Speaks. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address the board, now is the time to do that. During Citizen Speak, we ask that you give your name and address for our board secretary for our minutes, and that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please know that the board is not able to respond to your comments during the meeting, but we're happy to hear from you if you would like to address the board. All right, nobody's moving. Our next agenda item then is our board target and goals report. And those 3 pieces that we focus on are students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably, and students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. And that, under that item, it takes us to our Muskie Return to Learn update.
And I'm going to start out, I'll kick it over to Joelle here in just a minute, but a few things that I wanted to cover. One is we've been continuing to watch the positivity rate in the county. It has continued to decline. As of this evening, we're at 6.8%, which again, we've seen that steady decline, and we'd like to see that continue. That is very helpful in terms of as we think about our staff and our students and that community spread, and we know that's the biggest impact that we had in November when we ended up going virtually. So we're going to spend some time tonight talking about that secondary transition to full in-person based on the governor's ask of the legislation, which they passed, that has us starting in that full 100% option starting next Tuesday. So a lot of work has gone into this. This has been a challenge just because of the short time frame to get this done and get kind of that instructional model changed around. A couple of the pieces aligned to that. Like recently, the governor kind of ended the proclamation on mask wearing and other COVID restrictions. And we did send some things out in social media, but just as a reminder, that doesn't change anything for us. We already were requiring masks before any of that was implemented, and we're following the CDC guidelines. And so all of those, the mask wearing, the sanitation, the social distancing, all of those things are what has kept us in person as much as possible to this point, and that will continue. I also don't see that ending in the near future either, because again, we want to maintain that safe and effective learning environment, and that's a big piece of it. The last thing, a number of questions, again, in the community, but certainly with our staff around the vaccination process. And I think more so in the last week as we've started to see more schools and other places kind of receiving that 1B tier of vaccinations. So I did update the staff a little bit last week, but more information will be coming out actually tomorrow. I'm happy to announce that this Friday will be our first round of vaccinations. So in working with the county, and I should say, The plan that was communicated to me Friday morning was different by Friday afternoon and was different today. And part of that is they haven't been real clear on how much vaccine they're getting into the county from the state, and they feel like they're in a better position now. So those numbers have been solidified a little bit more. So that the plan has continued to change, and we've adjusted to that. So we know that over the next 3 full weeks, that we should have a majority of our staff who've requested the vaccine to have that. So we're excited to get that started as soon as possible. We'll be sending out information to the whole staff tomorrow just about the process in general. And obviously, when we're dealing with a limited number of vaccines each week, we can't do everybody all at once, nor do we want to do everybody all at once, just in case there are any side effects from that. And so we'll have a process, we have a process put together where we can look at kind of the most high risk of our staff, as well as those who have kind of the highest risk jobs within that. We have some classrooms with students with special needs that have a hard time wearing a mask. That's where we've seen a lot of quarantine, and we've had more issues in those types of classes. So we're going to prioritize those first and kind of work our way through that. Also try to spread it out so that we're not hitting all of one building at once, again, in case there are some side effects with that. So over these next 3 weeks, we will be getting, like I said, a majority of those done. We know the first 2 weeks we hope are more solid in terms of numbers. We don't know exactly what that third week will be yet. And so we'll start communicating to those individual groups. We'll also follow up when we come back around for their second dose, which would be right around the time of spring break. So the timing of that is actually pretty good. So we're excited to get that going, and we're excited to get that information out to staff, because I know that's a big concern on a lot of people's minds, and rightly so. So any questions about that before I turn it over to Joelle?
That is some of the most exciting news in my 15 years of board work that I think I truly have heard. Truly. So that is cause for celebration. We still have a ways to go, but appreciative for public health and their work, and glad that we're getting a step closer to getting our staff, keeping them safe.
And I appreciate all the work that County Health has done. And Jill Borkwin's been working very, very closely with them. So I appreciate all the work that she's done. It's been kind of COVID full-time here for most of the year for her, and especially now as we ramp up the vaccine distribution process as well.
And to say a little bit more along with that too is, because I know it's hard because everybody wants it now. Everybody wants to be able to, okay, can I get it and all of that. And so it's hard to communicate it properly enough that people understand that it's coming, we're doing what we can. And I think the communication you guys are all trying to do with it hopefully will renaissance with people, and that they understand that patience is coming.
Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Joelle to talk about our secondary transition.
Well, I'm here once again to present about a change in our delivery model, and I kind of want to just go through some highlights for all of you so you have an overview of the work that's been taking place. So at Susan Clark, I just wanted to share some numbers with you. In our virtual model, we had 35 students in 7th grade and 28 in 8th grade stay virtual, and those students will be working through Odysseyware. Also at Susan Clark, there are teachers that are assigned to those students that will be checking in with them several times a day to keep them connected to school, and also be there for a support for them academically. You can see that 338 students came back in 7th grade, and 334 in 8th grade to 100% in-person learning. I did attach letters that had been sent out to parents. We have sent out several communication to parents, kind of giving them updates on the different models and choices that they would have for their students. At the high school, I won't go through every grade level, but you can see a breakdown of students who, at each grade level, that have chosen to stay virtual. those students are also assigned to Odyssey Wear. They will also have teachers, our MHS teachers, that will be overseeing their progress and working with them virtually. And then in person, you can see how many students chose to come back to in person. With this transition, a lot of planning goes on behind the scenes, and we have a lot of great people, really working hard to ensure that this transition goes smoothly. In a few minutes, I'm going to turn it over to Susan Clark, principal and teachers, and also at the high school, Terry Hoganson and Cassie, to share a little bit more in depth about some of the work that they're doing. But behind the scenes, these are some of the things that we've really spent some time working through to ensure that all students are returning to a safe model. So I know Ryan has been working with transportation and Alicia Eggers around lunch schedules. I know some routes had to be reworked. Also, lunch schedules at the school had to be reworked to ensure that students had an opportunity to spread out. So I know, especially at the high school, they were looking at different lunch times for kids so that we didn't have so many kids eating at one time. Furniture in classrooms was brought back for the teachers this past week. We've spent some time going through getting cleaning supplies back in the past. Like, teachers might have had to wipe down desks, after certain desks after each period. Now teachers will be making sure, that they're cleaning after each class, all the desks and the doorways and things like that. I'm not going to spend very much time on professional development and technology because I know that they'll be talking about that later. But I'll skip on over to communication to parents. We are hoping that if parents have any questions regarding the models, that they continue to reach out to the schools so that we can help them with any questions that they have. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to, we are very fortunate to have a couple of teachers representing our schools. Jordan Wagren will be representing Susan Clark Junior High with Chris Nienhaus, the principal, and Cassie Calderon will be representing the teachers from the high school with Terry Hoganson, and they're each going to share a little bit about their work that they've been doing the past few days.
Okay, I'll just start off, just a couple things. I just wanted to give a shout out to our teachers more than anything. This is kind of like the third time we've had to restart school. So starting school once is incredibly hard, and it's a lot of work, and you have to think about lots of different things. This is the third time that they've had to do it. So everybody out there should be really proud of what's going on in our schools. Our teachers have done a remarkable job adjusting. Change is difficult in a school system, and now we've had these 3 gigantic changes in 1 year that they have to manage and deal with. And so they're just doing a great job. Everybody's really positive. We're really excited to have all the kids back in the building. Okay, we know this is the best spot for them to learn. So we're really excited for it. Obviously, there's some anxiety with everybody, the whole staff. Going into this year, we had some anxiety. We closed a school building and merged, 2 buildings together. So that put a lot of kids in our building, and there was lots of questions with that. So we had to revisit all those things that were going to come up, like, how are we going to work the hallways, how we're going to do lunches, how we're going to do transportation after school and traffic. And so we've revisited all those things. We've answered all the teachers' questions. We've given them a lot of time just to sit down and plan. And so last Friday, again, thank you for allowing us to have that day. We're going to be really ready to go because of that, just having that time to give to the teachers to sit down with their colleagues and plan out what a full classroom is going to be again, okay? Daily instruction, classroom management, and really just the culture. We haven't had all the kids together yet, and so the kids don't even know each other, and so you just kind of got to restart. And so you had a culture on A day, and you had a culture on B day. Now you got to intertwine those and create that culture. So Jordan just going to briefly discuss the teachers aspect and kind of what they did last Friday, and then what we're planning on doing on Wednesday for the early out.
I'm Jordan Meyer. Walgreen was my maiden name, so that was kind of fun to bring that back. I feel like I never hear that anymore. So on Friday, first of all, we're extremely appreciative for the time that we were given. I know as a teacher, the one thing that you can never have enough of is time. So I know that was extremely beneficial. We spent the majority of our time in our PLCs, just kind of re-looking at those pacing guides and figuring out, okay, what do we need to do now? What's our end game now with students being back 100% of the time? How are we going to meet those accommodations? How are we going to change things in order to have our students be successful overall? So that Friday was extremely beneficial. The time is something that we don't get a lot of, so it was awesome to be given that time, and I think we are much more prepared for our students to be coming back full-time next week.
Any questions?
You mentioned the
It
passing,
has,
passing time possibly.
oh, go ahead.
Could you kind of explain how you're gonna do that with, I guess, 672 kids? Are you gonna all go out at the same time, passing time, or how are you gonna do the hallway situation?
No, yeah, we're gonna stagger the release a little bit. We're gonna release our bus students at 3:21, try to get them to their lockers and out of the building onto the buses and start kind of clearing out the bus traffic, and hopefully that'll help clear some of that front traffic. We've also hired the Sheriff's Patrol for a couple weeks to be out there to help us with traffic. So we'll have at least one, maybe two patrol officers out there, like similar to what the high school does, just kind of directing traffic. Plus we have our security team and our police officer they're out there now, but we'll have 4 or 5 or 6 people out just trying to get people in the correct rhythm to get out of there, because it's a mess. I mean, we're gonna have to look at some long-term solutions probably, but we're gonna do our best to manage it, because I think what happened is more people are driving their kids to school now. Whether they're because they're home or what, there's just more kids driving less kids are riding the buses, so.
Hey, Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt. Will you step up to the mic just a little bit? At home, they can't hear it. We can all hear it in here, but at home, they can't hear it. Sorry to interrupt you.
So now you have to repeat everything.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah, now you have to
You know
say it
I
all
can't do
over
that.
again.
Right. I'll probably say something completely different.
Danny, you kind of took my question, but I have another one anyway. And that has to do with the fact that I've been to Susan Clark, and that is narrow hallways, and, the classrooms are probably a little tighter than, so when you talk about having, over 660 kids back in there, can you give us an example when you mean that, trying to figure out how they're supposed to maybe stagger and how they're going to be able to try to do your best to keep them at their social distancing and such?
Right, yeah. So one of the things that we do is we're not allowing the students to go to their lockers in between periods. So basically they need to get their items for the first half of the day and kind of go to their classes. Then they can go before lunch, after lunch, and at the end of the day. So that'll widen the hallways, because if all the lockers are open and all the students are in the hallways, then it's really tight. We feel like if we have the lockers closed, though, that gives the whole hallway to travel, and we'll be okay. We're just going to have to monitor that. We talked a lot about it with the teachers and our security team. Just everybody's got to do a really good job of being out and being visible and walking the halls and just helping students get around a little bit with all the students in there. So we're going to kind of monitor it. If we have to, we can go to some kind of staggered release for the bells too, if we really need to. But we're gonna try it and see how we go. We could release one side of the hallway 30 seconds early or something, just to kind of get them moving. But we're gonna try it just with regular bells right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I would say that, I'm trying to look it up, but I know that everybody's concerned with the number of kids, but where they're at right now, we were pretty close to that number when Joe Wieskamp and that group were in 8th grade. We had almost 650 plus kids, so it's not that far off. So don't be overwhelmed, or I don't want to have a big panic about how many kids there are at West Middle School. The size of the building hasn't changed, and the number of kids are pretty similar to what we've had at our biggest peak, granted, but that's not a huge number, and I think it's very manageable. I think that these guys can handle that, so.
So our class sizes are going to be manageable then too also, Chris?
Yeah, the highest class will be 24, 25 maybe, so we're in good shape class size wise, yeah. Any questions for Jordan?
Well, Chris, I don't have a question, but I would like to say thank you for the hard work that teachers and the administration in each building are putting together to make sure that our students will have the best environment, learning environment that they can be at. So thank you for everything.
Thank you.
And I guess I'd like to thank Jordan, you and your staff that you work with. You know, it's been a difficult year, and you guys have adapted very well, and I think you're giving the best education for Muscatine that we can possibly do. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, and I know this year has been hard, but I do think it's made teachers kind of reflect on their own teaching and see maybe this hasn't been working, and so what things can we be doing differently, especially with this technology that we have that's so available to our students. So I think it's been a good year of reflection as well for educators, and hopefully then we can continue to build on those things too. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I thought I was waiting for someone else to do that for me. I also wanted to echo what Chris was saying about our staff and our student body for always stepping up. It has been a unique year, to say the least, a trying year in some ways, a growing year. And every step of the way, every time we get to a hurdle, we jump it. And we do it with style, and we do it with dedication and determination. And, you know, we had a student discussion last week as part of our getting ready for this. And, you know, it would have been a great forum for students to just vent. And instead, it was a very constructive, very positive, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? What's going to happen now? Wanting to know good answers to tough questions. But it wasn't about feeling sorry for yourself. It wasn't about looking at the situation negatively. It was about, let's go forward. And so that's been kind of the theme this year is, you know, we'd always like to look in our rearview mirror a little bit, but it's also only productive in a historical sense. We have to continue to look forward. And that's what our people are doing over and over again. And so kudos to them. Thanks for all the work and effort that they put into things. I am just going to turn this over to Cassie because she is really good at presenting stuff, so I'll turn it over to you, Cassie.
Oh, thank you, Terry. So last week, like Terry said, we met as a committee in our building, and we discussed the returning to learn aspects of, you know, the struggles that were happening. We reviewed the 10 impactful minutes, which are, you know, what our expectations are for getting those kids back engaged, making those connections with our students. So using the first 5 minutes to, you know, review what was going on the day before, talking about maybe what was happening over the weekend, what's new in their lives to build that rapport and build those connections between ourselves and the students and the students that they haven't seen, the teammates that they haven't seen most of the year. Then at the end of the class period, using that time to reflect on what has been learned during that class period, because we know that statistics show that students learn or remember more about what happened in the first 5 minutes of class and what happens at the end of 5 minutes of class. So those are the important time frames for us to focus on, you know, what has been going on in your lives, and then what has been going on in class. What are the learning targets? We did talk about reviewing the overview of technology and trying to build our technology options in our building, making sure that when our kids are, you know, foreseeing the fact that if kids are going to be quarantined, trying to make that experience more realistic. So we talked about the owls that some people are possibly going to be using in their classroom. Some people are already using those. We're going to use some of the time on Wednesday to visit some of the classrooms that are already using that to see how it's working for them so that we can make those decisions for our own classrooms. We also talked about using Apple TVs and monitors that, maybe that isn't something that you actually, an owl might not be something that you actually need in your classroom. And also the, I'm losing the word for it. Dock cameras. Because some people were talking about, for math especially, they have a writing camera that they use, a write pad that they use, and they said it was absolutely functional in the way that they're instructing, and it works very, very well because kids on the other side can see it, see what you're doing, and use that just as well as they could the owl. So we kind of talked about those kinds of aspects of things, and people were sharing their opinions on how the technology was working. Parent and student communication plans. I know Terry has already sent out a lot of that information because I'm a parent of 2 high schoolers, so I've gotten it double. So I know that's been out there and it's available for parents, so it's been communicated to them. Planning for our daily instruction and preparing our classrooms. We talked extensively on how we're going to continue the cleaning process, continue to make sure that kids are using the sanitizer when they come in or when they're leaving our classrooms. I know from my own perspective, I remind students constantly, okay, make sure if you're going to use the restroom, make sure you wash your hands. I know they probably think, oh my gosh, but I'm a high school teacher, but I'm still going to remind them like a mom. And then our technology supports for this week coming up. Wednesday, we're going to have the availability of our tech staff, and we're going to use that time that they're going to be available so that we can go in and ask them questions, or again, like I said already, we're going to have that time to go into other people's classrooms to see how they're using those owls out and what technology they're using to get a better grasp of what we need. The grading committee did meet last week per conversation with Stacy Orr. They reviewed what the criteria were, what our expectations are for grading, and what points they're going to restate and revisit with the students and with parents and the staff as well. Not really anything changed, just that they wanted to make sure that the key points for grading are in the forefront and we refresh the memories of the students and staff and parents. I myself have been working on attendance, absences for students. We've had, fall semester was just a crazy time to focus on attendance with the virtual kids not signing in sometimes, and then on their off days, and then students that were coming in. It was just a struggle. I wouldn't say that our attendance data is very realistic or valuable at that point in the fall, just because it was just so unpredictable, I would say, would be a good word for it. But we did what we could do. At this point, we're looking forward to having the kids in the building 100% of the time. It'll be a lot more normalized data that we'll be able to pull. I have developed a program for attendance. We're doing attendance incentives for the spring semester, which we're doing grade level incentives. Last week, the kids got released, the 9th grade got released because they won the challenge and had the highest attendance, and they got to go to lunch early by 4 minutes for both time periods, or for both days, so it was kind of nice. And then this month will be, whoever wins will be a dodgeball tournament against teachers. Next month, March Madness basketball, and then May, we're kind of to be determined. We're not really sure. Hopefully we can get outside and get some fresh air and do something fun for those kids. And then we're also doing individual incentives as well. So any kids that don't meet that, or are not at a chronic level of attendance, will have their name put into the drawing and can win a variety of things. Game tickets to the games have been really popular. Got a special two special parking spots out in front of the attendance office, and those have been taken already. So those are really exciting. And then some of the local coffee shops and vendors and restaurants have stepped up to allow us to do some of that kind of $5 coupons for them to go in and get a coffee or whatever. So it's been really popular so far. So kudos to our kids for continuing to meet those challenges and looking forward to seeing a lot more kids signing in and winning those attendance incentives. Planning for the daily instruction and preparing kind of goes along with what I already talked about with us discussing the 5 and 5. Unless Terry wants to tack on something, that's pretty much what we discussed, is cleaning daily, making sure the kids are prepared, not lowering our standards for curriculum, but not trying to teach too much. Because we realize that they're coming back and it's going to be a transition time for them, so.
Just before we take any questions, I do want to express again appreciation for the board giving us the day, the time to meet. It was very valuable, and again, just like Chris in the junior high said, it was very valuable to us also. So, any questions that you'd either like to have for either Cassie or myself?
I have a question. So as a student, returning 100%, I know that like in some of my classes, the 8A kids, like I'm a B-Day student, so I know that I have friends on the 8A and like they're ahead of us or behind us. How are teachers going to approach that with like making sure everyone's learning the same stuff, like with us being there every day instead of like, you know
I
what
would
I'm-
say that, that's part of the gift, the trick, and the training of being a teacher, is to look at where students are at and to blend that into some sort of a meaningful whole. So what they will be doing is looking at where each group is at and not trying to hold one group back, but trying to maybe do extension things and do that until we kind of get to some sort of a equilibrium in how curriculum can be given.
Thank you.
Mine is, you talked about the technology needs, but you're talking from the standpoint of for the school itself. How is that working still for the kids with their having their laptops and usage at home, and do they seem to be utilizing them well? And is there any questions or problems with any of that technology?
Sure.
Because you're a parent too, so.
Actually, yeah, I'm speaking it from a parent perspective and from a teacher perspective. I have not had any issues with my students, with my own children being at home on virtual days, other than that one day when half the town was out. But that was nothing, we couldn't control that. It was nothing we could do about it. So, and I think the teachers did pretty well as far as knowing, their information was sent out through Google Classroom. Notes to the students saying, we realized that everything was out. So it was communicated very well, I think, on that side. As far as in the building, looking at it from the standpoint of me being in the classroom and having students outside the classroom and having to meet with them, I haven't really had, very many issues. I think those arose more at the beginning of the school year when we had several students that didn't have access to internet. But those were relieved very quickly through the programming that we had available, getting students that needed access to internet, those little pods, which was fantastic because it was so simple. You just sent the email of the student name and they got it, and that was wonderful. So I really haven't had any issues, per se for that. Google Classroom seems to work very well. The kids actually have been very great about charging laptops this year. I don't know what's going on. I'm a little scared, but it's been, it's been good. I don't have any complaints, and I haven't really heard many complaints from other people as well. So
Good,
yeah,
good.
they're stepping up. That's great.
That's right. Thank you.
Terry, are you doing anything different you have over 1,200 kids in the school starting next Monday? Are you doing anything different for the passing times in between classes to maintain social distancing? Or I know it's going to be pretty limited what you can do.
At this point, we have kind of alerted staff and security to make sure that we just keep people moving. What we really don't want is congregating of kids that are just hanging around, those kinds of things. We just want to, as long as we're keeping them moving, going from one location to another. High school students do not use their lockers very much, so that is not as big of an issue as what we would see at the junior high level. So we expect that we will be monitoring those things also, just like we will be doing the 3 lunch periods, to try and make sure that we create as much social distancing and as many opportunities for kids to stay as apart as we can make it and during the school day.
Okay, good.
We also, to piggyback on that, we also have implemented at the beginning of the year, our stairwells are marked one way, so that has helped a lot. And the kids are amazingly abiding by that. Would you guys agree with me for the most part?
Yeah. So
yeah.
One thing with that, as you know, one side is up, one side's down. I think one thing that would make, it's a simple change, but one would make easier for students would, have one side have both an up and a down. So like the side of, the old science wing have, one going up and the other going down instead of having to walk all the way around to the other wing to just go down.
I've noticed that too. Like, I know that both the sides on like the 23 side, whatever, like the odd side, there's 2 ups, but then on the other side it's 2 downs. So like, I know that like sometimes I'm late to my Muscatine class just trying to like get around all the people and get down to get there. But teachers are very understanding of being late right now with all the accommodations.
Well, thanks for that feedback. I wrote a note, so I'm going to pass it on to you.
I also see Ryan over there, so Ryan's taking notes too over there,
Love
so
it,
we'll
love
be looking at that.
I'm sure I've
Thank
seen
you
it.
for that.
Can you tell the times for the 3 lunches? I'm sure I've seen it somewhere. What is? Can you say that out loud? Do you know?
I don't, and I'll have to look it up. I mean, I don't.
I get-
The trouble the trouble is a bad way to put it. The unique thing that will be different more than anything else is that we'll have to adjust our muskie time, so it's not a common muskie time anymore. There'll be 3 different muskie times, which means that they won't be able to have as much access at any one time. All teachers won't be able to say all students are available from this time.
I think it might have been on the letter, but I didn't think we had announced it.
Ryan has it.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Good deal, Ryan.
Do you know when that schedule would be pushed out to students?
We were going to do that at the first part of this week, just because we wanted to vet it through the teacher group to make sure that if they saw a problem, that we adjusted to that through them first. And we didn't really hear a lot of like time problems. We heard more of access problems. Like, I want to be able to access all these students at this time, so that's what that was. Is this a finger that we have to?
Right.
It died.
Here's a picture of Ryan's family.
Well, we can give everybody at home your access code, right?
Yeah, we can do that. But just read that off on there if you get it.
Oh, no, this is all you.
All right, well, let's see if I can, okay.
There we go.
All right. Lunch A goes from 10:54 to 11:24. And lunch A has 4th period, 11:29 to, I'm going a little too fast for the students. I'm going to go a little slower so you can get this copy down. And we'll get this out, I promise. 12:17. Muskie time is 12:22 to 12:53. Lunch B, 4th period is 10:54 to 11:39. Lunch is 11:44 to 12:14. And muskie time is 12:19 to 12:53. Lunch C, 4th period is 10:54 to 11:42. Muskie time is 11:47 to 12:17. And lunch is from 12:22 to 12:53.
Are kids allowed to eat in classrooms? I mean, when I say eat, snack, anything like that in classrooms?
Can they?
Yeah.
We typically have been discouraged just because for sanitation
Sure.
reasons having that in there. But there has been some that have taken snacks and take it back. It's kind of teacher dependent on
Okay.
how
And I'm just asking, just
particular they are about
depending
that.
on the earliest lunch, I'm just thinking I've got a 17-year-old who could eat all the darn time. And if he's eating it early, I'm just thinking about that with other kids. Just, is there an opportunity for teachers if they would allow, and again, I get it, you can't bring in McDonald's, but whether it be granola bars or just something that's controllable?
Okay.
Is that-
That's something for us to absolutely will consider. We definitely know that a
I don't
student
know.
that's
It's-
fed is more attentive
Right.
than those that are hungry at any point, so we know that also.
So for me, I'm an early bird lifting at 7. So like I don't eat breakfast before I go, but I know my first period, I've had a different first period for both semesters now, and they're both super understanding. Like the only class that I've ever had in high school that I wasn't allowed to eat in was the science class, but that was just if we were doing labs, but then other than that we were. It's just like not being a huge distraction, I think, is the biggest thing for teachers. They just want us to like stay quiet, and like if they're instructing, obviously don't make a lot of noise with wrappers and stuff, but teachers are super understanding with like snacks and stuff, just like how you asked. So
Thank you. Any other questions that you have for?
I have more of a comment than a question. First, I'd like to commend both buildings, and I would really like us to remind them that on the 31st of July, when we put out our first Return to Learn policy program, the second sentence in that states that we will have the health and safety needs of our students, staff are always our priority. I think that we need to remember that. And that's not just the physical part of it, it's the mental side of it. We know that this is very stressful. Chris said that we've started 3 times, and anybody that's been a part of the school system knows exactly how stressful that is. And for people who have gone through that 3 different times, it's way out there. Teachers, take care of yourselves. Students, take care of yourselves. We need to remember that regardless of what happens this year, this is not a lost year. We try to create lifelong learners. There is no line in the sand. And I think sometimes as teachers, we need to remind that to them too. There's not a line that you have to get to at the end of this year. You know, this is a chance for us to really look at priority standards and look at what we're teaching and say, here is what is important. Here's what we have to guarantee our kids get for the rest of this year. And that's it. We don't have to get it all in there, so don't feel like you have to be heroes, please. We've been thrown a curveball. You've stepped up graciously and tried to hit it. You're at the plate. We know you're going to do the best that you possibly can. I've watched this for over 40 years in this city. I've been part of the educational system for over 40 years here. We have great teachers. We have people that are passionate. We have parents that are passionate. We have kids that are, I guarantee that our kids are smarter today from a content standpoint than when I went through school. All right, when we talk to our community members, they didn't ask us to focus on content. They asked us to focus on teaching kids to be persistent, to love learning, to be continual learners. So that's what we need to accomplish in this next few months. I'll leave it at that. And I'll try to be quiet the rest of the time, Denny. I said try.
No, actually, you said a lot of what I felt echoing, myself on there. And it is very true that as long as we feel like we're learning, that we're reaching the kids, and that as you said, both of you girls, about the teaching part of it, as in you were learning new things and new techniques and everything too. And so that's not a wash. I mean, that is something that in the end, on the other side, the idea is we're going to come out stronger. It's just that, what everything we have to go to get there. We're still in that part of it yet where we have to be cautious. We still have to think about what's all going with that health stuff and everything. And so I just commend you all to continue to be vigilant on all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, so I have one more question for you. With all students returning, I think the concern is, what if there is a positive case, and the quarantining procedures. So I guess, what are the access that students are going to have to their teachers if they are placed into quarantine?
That's one of the things we're looking at with the technology right now. We want to make it more accessible than even it's been in the past. So we're looking at potentially using some technology called Meeting Owls, which allows interactive. There's better audio and video quality that go with that. But some teachers have preferred that that's not their best form of approach. There's somebody just saying, give us an extra monitor, give us this other technology, Apple TVs or whatever else it might be, and we'll be able to create an environment that's receptive to learners. And so the concept will always be and continue for us to work at providing that learning environment that allows students immediate access to the learning that's going on in that classroom, not a delayed or have to pick it up later and those kinds of things. Sometimes that may happen while we're in transition, but our goal will always be to have it be more seamless.
I have another question. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying thank you to all of our teachers and staff for working very hard to adapt with this year. But I've noticed a very large student concern, which I've had a lot of my peers voice it to me, had been concerns with masks and children wearing masks. We understand that a lot of our teachers are trying to enforce it a lot, but we'd like to know if there's any way we can kind of fix those policies to kind of let the students, remind them on how to wear their masks, because in most of our classes there will be a lot of students who wear their masks below the nose, and usually some teachers will not remind them, and especially in the hallways I will even see kids without their mask completely. So I was wondering if there's any way we could revise that policy to help remind our students that they need to wear their masks correctly to protect others.
Absolutely, I don't have any problem with us continuing to have reminders out there. And then we did talk to our staff, saying that as we have more students back, we need to be extra diligent in making sure that we're monitoring this. There's a number of staff that are very concerned about the number of bodies that are going to be back in their room. Not from a sense of only like they just want to make sure that it's safe. They want to make sure that the students feel good about being in there and that they're meeting their needs. So I find that all individuals tend to want to push limits at some point, and it's our job to kind of remind them where those limits are and what we're going to be expecting. So we want to have the nose covered. We want to have everything. In that case, we will be reminding students if we catch them in the hallway. I have not seen, maybe they just know where we stand, any student that's had the mask off. They're pretty smart sometimes. But I would say I have not encountered any that haven't been wearing masks, and if they have, when coming in some way, they've been flagged and given a mask and said, you are required to wear this. Also, for your sake, is that if we haven't had many, but of the students that have just refused, like try and make me, we have dealt with those, and we had a beautiful mom moment where we had mom come in, and we haven't had that problem again with that student because the rules were established, let's put it that way. So everybody's been a team player primarily.
I had something to add on what you guys were saying about new techniques or whatever. I was talking earlier with Lisa about how being a senior, and I only have 3 classes at the high school, but I have noticed like a lot of teacher accommodations with like the hybrid learning was preparing us very well for college. Like me going to a university next year knowing that I'm going to have to maintain my homework on my own time, that was very helpful this year. So I just wanted to let you guys know that it wasn't like just not a good learning module. I really did learn a lot of new techniques and like learned a lot about myself on how I need to study and where and how much time I need for things, and also with like learning responsibilities for a job and like having to maintain all of that. So I really did learn a lot. As you guys were saying, how teachers learned a lot, I think students have learned a lot too. So
Thank you.
Thank you for all your efforts in all of this. And as Chris said, 3 restarts. I hope it's not going to be any more than that. But I know y'all have to feel like this has been a year that has lasted 10 years. It just, or it's Groundhog Day and it just never ends. I'm not sure which that is. So your work is so appreciated, and all of the staff that's not here tonight. Ryan, your staff who's trying to figure out scheduling, and Scott, your staff who's answering phone calls about my screen broke or this doesn't work, or it's all of those pieces. We are so grateful that the education and the support we are providing our students, and hopefully our staff, hopefully each other as well. Thank you for that. This will be a year we will certainly all remember in a variety of ways. So.
And I'd also just like to thank our staff and our administration, and this isn't necessarily the choice that we might have made if it was up to us, but I appreciate people pitching in and getting this done. And sometimes good leadership is just getting out of the way. And the best people to solve this are the people who are going to be living this. And so I know you guys have spent a lot of time, even, again, one of the things we asked for was as long a runway, and Terry knows I use that phrase, like, give us some runway on this, and we didn't have much. And so for everyone, from all aspects, from transportation to instruction to nutrition services, to do the best we can to provide a safe and effective learning environment. Again, I appreciate that. And what we have said to them is, tell us what you need. If it's technology, let us know. That's why we wanted to make sure they had Friday for that professional development. They needed time to plan. And so again, I just appreciate all the efforts, and I think we said, at that first return to learn plan, that if the plan looked the same at the end of the year, we probably didn't do something. But some of that's been pushed on us, and we continue to evolve and get better, and we will learn moving forward. There are going to be some things that will keep with us, and it's good to hear that from the students and get your perspective on this as well. So just want to thank everybody for that.
All right, that takes us to our action or possible action items for the evening. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education, will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, bills and claims, employment recommendations, special education contracts, tuition out contracted services for regular ed students, and the Latino Outreach Memorandum of Agreement with MCC and the ISU Extension. What are the wishes of the board on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Denny, sure, seconded. That is what you asked me? Yes? I thought they were all going to leave me hanging for a minute, but we got there. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. That takes us all the way to letter H, which is to accept and place on file the FY20 financial audit.
Yeah, so tonight I hope to put to rest FY20 financials anyway. So I gave the board the audit report, and then I also provided kind of a condensed version. I know it's a 77 page document. I think I asked or suggested about 17 of those pages to review. And then also I highlighted there's 2 required letters to the school board, and I highlighted those areas. So I'd just like to give a shout out to the audit committee, because it is their recommendation that the board approve the audit report tonight, and that's Connie Wilson-Krill and Kevin Zymet, Angela Johnson, Robert Hayes, and Bill Harper, and then Tammy serves as the board rep. So I appreciate their input on the audited financials, and with that, I will turn it over to Mia Frommelt. She's a partner with Bonesock and Frommelt, who are our auditors.
Well, as Tom mentioned, we met with the audit committee and had a robust discussion on the year-end audit. So I have summary comments tonight, but I'm happy to take any questions that you have. And I have a presentation up, and also I believe you have some hard copies. First is the deliverables. We issue a financial report and then 2 separate letters. And within those documents, we complete 3 audits: a financial statement audit, a government auditing standards, which is compliance with laws and regulations, and understanding internal controls, and then a federal single audit, which is of your major federal programs. So there we go.
I don't have a copy.
The results of that, the report card, if you will, is that we had unmodified opinions on all 3 of those audits. It's the highest level of an opinion you can receive. So it was an excellent audit report. The next couple slides are just to walk you through some summary financial information and comparing 2020 to 2019. Total revenues for 2020 were $63.4 million compared to $63.4 million the year before. There was a very little change. Some of the significant changes within the categories, though, are in property taxes. That had a decrease of about $900,000, largely because of a tax rate decrease. And then other local sources increased about $765,000. That primarily was due to a large donation, a private donation for the STEM project that came in during the current year. That offset some of the losses as a result of school closures with the pandemic, because you can imagine with fees, admission fees, club activities, that kind of stuff, that all slowed down at that last fourth quarter. Expenditures look like they might have changed significantly. I mean, in actuality, they did. They in total were $76.3 million compared to $65.7 million, so about a $10 to $10.5 million change. But that is all in the capital outlay category. That increased the $10 million because of your large capital projects going on, primarily the STEM addition, storm shelter, McKinley addition, and renovations. So in order to be more comparable, I looked at your operating categories, which are instruction and support services. Those are your day-to-day operating activities. And most of those expenditures are payroll related. The total change, if you looked at just those operating categories, was a decrease in total expenditures of 1%. So very little change from the prior year. The payroll adjustments were expected to be about 3% when you look at contracts and adjustments from steps and lanes and negotiated plans. And so payroll did fluctuate as expected. Some of the additional changes, though, were the prior year in support service had some additional bus purchases that did not reoccur, obviously, in the current year. And so that's why you kind of see payroll go up and some other expenditures go down. And in a year like this, it's pretty good that you see that in terms of knowing that that last fourth quarter had some major changes just a result of the pandemic changes. And then the last, next slide was single audit results. In the bound financial document, page 73 tends to be the summary of the audit. That's where you see that you had all unmodified opinions and you did not have any findings to report. So again, a very strong audit result. That summary page would tell you, again, that there are no internal control issues. There are some items that the state auditor does require us to test and does require us to report on. I would like to emphasize, we did not think they rose to a significant level, and that's what our opinion says, is these were not material, but we are required to report them, and that's why you're made aware of those. And your federal programs, we tested the nutrition program, which is that and your Title I program tend to be your largest programs. And again, no findings in internal controls and compliance. So again, good report. And the separate letter is called a control deficiency letter. The old way of referring to that was called management advice, which I kind of prefer the old name a little bit better, because it's not findings, it's observations that as we're performing the audit, items that don't rise to a finding level, but we still think they're worth your consideration and being informed of. And so that's why you have a separate letter on those. Are there any questions on the year-end audit?
I think you're off the hook for questions.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you for making the trip here. Thank you for the work on the report. And you did, it's worth mentioning, even during the pandemic, y'all did your work, you were here on site.
Yes.
So we appreciate that. I'm sure that had its own set of challenges as well, but we appreciate you being here to do that.
And I do want to thank you and Tom and his team. Thank you for reminding me. It was an interesting audit year, and we did request more to be electronically submitted to us so that we could be extremely efficient with documents on site that we need to be on site to see. And we really appreciate the accommodations for that. So I want to thank you.
Good. Thank you. So our action item is to accept and place the FY20 financial audit on file. What are the wishes of the board?
I'd like to move to accept and place on file the FY20 financial audit.
And is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the financial audit for FY20 and place on file. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. And I do appreciate the work of the audit committee. We have a great representatives through the community of those that are, that is their profession in the world of numbers. And for them to be able to come in and look over that work, we always appreciate those that are willing to volunteer to do that. So, and Tom does a great job leading that group.
Oh, thanks. And actually, 3 of the members on the audit committee in their past life, they did audit Muscatine schools at one time, so that also helped.
So our next item, Tom, that I think you're looking for support for is to approve the audit agreement between MCSD and Bonsack Fromlet for FY21,
Right.
22, and 23.
Right. So every 3 years, we send out an RFP for audit services. I did mail or email out to some audit firms, and then we also placed it on our website, and we got a couple responses from putting it on our website. So I provided the summary in the in the board book, and I gave you the list of our evaluation criteria, and the recommendation was made to the audit committee, and they approved, or they came to a consensus on approving another 3-year agreement with Bonsack and Fromelt. So that is the recommendation before you.
What are the wishes of the board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mike, was that you?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the audit agreement as presented with Bonsack and Fromelt, and I apologize because I pronounced that incorrectly when I said it the first time. I'm sorry. For FY21, 22, and 23. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
We look forward to another 3 years. Thank you for that. The audit committee had some really good discussion about opportunities does it make sense to look for someone new, just to mix things up in that world. And I have learned with my time on this committee that there's not a big world for people that really specialize in school finance and school audit work. And I know that it takes some time for Tom to build that relationship in his team. So when we have something that works really well, it's great to be able to keep that going. So we look forward to another 3 years. Thanks. All right, our next action item is to award a contract to Gordon Flesch Company for the district-wide phone system upgrade in the amount of $159,315. Do you have any information you want to add to that item, Clint?
Well, I would say I can tell you a little bit about, part of the reason we are doing that. If you have questions more about the specifics and the technology behind that, I know Scott Comstock would be happy to answer that. And I will tell you from my perspective, my request was to our team is to bring us up to the 21st century in terms of phone systems. That includes a high school phone system that was built in the early 90s that you can't get parts for anymore. And when they talk to me about it, they say it's brittle, so that if it breaks, it sometimes doesn't work. In some of our buildings, we don't have things like caller ID. Seems like a pretty standard thing we should have, and voicemail, direct lines, all of those things. So this was a good opportunity, and given the types of communications we're trying to do now, with some of the issues we've had with the pandemic, this is something that needs to get done.
And I will say, if you're watching at home, as we look at these items, there are 3 or more bids that have been sought. That information was in the board book, so board members had that to look over. And the recommendation that you see is then the result of who was presented and followed the guidelines within that RFP that was presented, as well as the most economical financial choice as well. So we have done, research has been done, due diligence has been done. Scott, do you have anything you want to add?
No, except to say that this is something that we've been, I think, seeking for a really long time. Our phone systems are very different in every building in terms of ages. Like Mr. Christopher said, the high school is in the 90s, and our capacity, like anytime we have an electrical storm and it shorts out one of the cards in it, I know our phone our system guy, Mr. Gertz, just sweats bullets because he's concerned that we're going to lose it finally. So and one of the things that we don't have the capability of doing right now is really direct dialing between any classroom to any other classroom in the building, or any office to any other office. So if I need to talk to the tech support staff in one of the other buildings, I have to go through the building, the central office main phone number. And that would go for any one of the departments. So Alicia can't talk to a kitchen in another building without going through the main line. So, that ties up one of those main lines for perhaps other people that are needing to get in there. So there's a lot of functionality that we've just not had for a really long time that we're excited to finally be a little more efficient and increase safety and security, et cetera.
So when is this going to take place?
I believe the plan is to have the phone system put in is probably as soon as school is out, or the work is already starting to be done in terms of just trying to prepare things internally for some cabling to get between some older locations where the existing phone system is in a building to a more modern location.
Will the yellow rose at Texas go by the wayside? I mean, that's really my important question.
Yeah, you're right. There's some classic phone voice or hold music out there right now.
You're a fan of the hold music, Mike. That's what I'm hearing. What are the wishes of the board then on this item?
I'll make the motion to approve the contract for the district-wide phone system upgrade.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the contract to the Gordon Flash Company. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay. For the district-wide phone system in the amount of $159,315. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Our next item is to award a contract to Midwest Tennis and Track for the Muscatine High School track resurfacing project. This is in the amount of $125,185. Ryan, do you have anything additional that we need to know?
Nothing really big. This gives us the opportunity to work with a local company that, with all of our things that are going to be happening in the stadium area this summer, is willing to work with our timeline and be flexible with turf and track and stands. So I'm very happy to be working with these guys again. So,
is this the original company that put in the track, the original track?
it is.
Okay. Granted, that's been a little while ago, but they've had some experience then specifically with our track. Okay.
And Ryan, they came in and they tested the base that's underneath that.
Yes, all the
Asphalt's all
testing is
fine?
being done, correct. we're in good shape.
What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve or to award the contract to Midwest Tennis and Track for the Muscatine High School resurfacing project in the amount of $125,185. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Can they start today? Probably not. All right. Tongue in cheek, gotta wait for a little bit of that snow to go away. Our next item is to set the public hearing for Monday, February 22nd for the proposed 2021-2022 school calendar. That particular hearing will be at 6:05 p.m. We will be meeting at the Administration Center at 2900 Mulberry Avenue. So this is not approving the calendar. This is approving setting to have a public hearing. This will allow, if there's any public that would like to offer comments to the proposed calendar, they will be able to do so at that time. Hopefully that calendar goes way easier than anything we've seen this year.
And you do have a copy of that draft calendar in there. What I would say is it looks very similar to the calendar that we have this year in terms of start date being the 23rd of August, and our end before we get to the end of May on the 26th would be the last student day. The spring break, winter break, all of those are pretty much identical to what we had this year. We did work with a group of administrators and teachers and talk through some things. I believe, it's my understanding, this was the first year that we ended semester after winter break. And we will continue that with this proposed calendar, partially because once you lock in that we can't start before the 23rd, it gets really difficult to kind of smush all of that in there. And so this is kind of a unusual year to try to go through that first calendar anyway. So we'll have some additional time to work through that. The other piece that is unique to this draft is that you'll notice on the 23rd of August, it says first day of school, and that's all it says. In the past, we've done some different things with pre-K, with kindergarten, that we didn't start all the students at one time. We do the same thing kind of junior high and high school, I believe, as well. So there are some things we're still working through, some pieces that we're talking about with teachers. One of those is looking at some assessment days where our elementary teachers would be assessing students to meet individually with students in all of their classes, meet with parents as a way to really understand where kids are coming in at. This fall might be the most important time to do that, as we've had that disconnected learning year. But since we don't have those details worked out, what we still know is the 23rd will be the first day of school. We will still define what that looks like and communicate that out, but we can move forward at least with identifying when the first day is the last day and move forward. So that is what you'll see right now, and again, we'll continue to communicate that out and share any changes or updates that come along with that.
Clint, are there extra teacher in-service days? It looks like at the end of the year,
Yep.
This year there weren't those, looks like 4 days proposed, or those extra
So
days?
we have 192 contract days with staff.
Okay.
When we finished building the calendar, we had 188. And working with teachers, we talked about, you want to put some before, do you want to put some after, you want to put some in the middle, how do we want to work that? And that decision was to put those at the end. We will still work with the association on what those days look like and how we leverage that professional development for them. Some of that might look like a conference run for teachers by teachers, where they are developing sessions and delivering that. But we'll work through those pieces. But right now, that's where they felt would be the best place to put them.
Thank you.
We have this posted on our website if folks in the community want to be able to look at that between now and February 22nd.
We can certainly do that.
Okay. What are the wishes of the board on the public hearing?
I'd like to move with the proposed date, time, place for the public hearing on Monday, February 22nd, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to set the public hearing for Monday, February 22nd for the proposed 2021-2022 school calendar. That meeting will be at the administration building at 2900 Mulberry and at approximately 6:05 p.m. And then at that time, we will, after the public hearing, then we will most likely approve that calendar at that time. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And the motion carries. Our next action item is to approve the early retiree list for FY21 for teachers. And that list was provided to board members in your board packet. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and it's been moved and seconded to approve the early retiree list for the FY21 for teachers. Is there any discussion?
I guess I'd just like to thank the teachers that are on this list for their years of service. There's a number of them on here that I worked with in my 29 years in this district, and they're outstanding teachers. They'll be hard to replace. I just want to say my appreciation for them.
I would like to second that too. I mean, because I know, as I'm looking at the list, I know good number of them. I didn't work with them, obviously, but I know good number of them, and I know that they were very well involved in the school system and their classes with their students and so on. So the least we can say is thank you for all these years and times and so on that they give to our district, our school district.
And as a student of some of them, I'll say thank you as well.
Wow.
Just one in particular.
And it's a tough decision to know when the right time to retire is, and I'm sure with the events that have happened this year, maybe it made that decision a little more clear for some, but it's a tough decision, and we do thank them for their years of service. If we went through and tallied up the years, there's a lot of years on this list. So we are grateful for the imprint you've made on students in Muscatine and the sacrifices that you've given to your students. So thank you for that. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor of approving the early retirees for FY21, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. That takes us to our next item, which is to approve the early retirement incentive for non-teaching staff for FY21. And Clint, I'll let you may have a little more you want to add to this. This was an item we talked about maybe coming our way.
Yep, we had a lot of conversation about the teacher incentive, as well as would we be offering it for non-teaching staff. And at that time, I said it would depend on kind of our budget situation and how much we may need to reduce, and if we can see some savings by some people retiring and not replacing them. Given where we're at, looking at the budget picture, knowing even with some of the proposals that are in the legislation right now that's being drafted, we know we're going to need to do that. So, what is before you is identical to what we did for our teachers, but for those non-teaching staff.
And this proposal gives until noon on April 1st, if I'm reading this correctly, to submit a signed application, which meets our needed time frame of offering, introducing, and then giving time for acceptance.
Yes.
Okay. What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the early retirement incentive for the non-teaching staff for FY21. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. That takes us to our discussion and information items of the agenda. The next list is a second reading on policies, and it is just that it is a second reading. So as per our policy, we read through policies 3 times before approving. Unless it is required by law that we either have to have it or it has to change, then we do it on a one-time read-through. So hopefully all of these policies that you see before you look familiar. If you've not had a chance to read or review them, please do that. And if you have questions, you can get those to Clint or Lisa for discussion. They will be on our next agenda for their 3rd and final reading. And that takes us to December 2020 financials. Tom, you're getting all kinds of time at the podium tonight.
Okay, so presented tonight are the December financials. The first page is our deposit balances, and so if you think about December 2020, we are halfway through our fiscal year. The December deposit balances are showing reconciled and as compared to the month before of November 2020. The next page is the basically summary of year-to-date revenues and expenditures by fund, reporting as of December 20 and compared to December 2019. And I will note that if you printed off your board book, December 31st of 2019 figures are wrong because I didn't see the formula correction until today when I was reviewing these. So look at the board book. And my point being that the fund balances compare to last month, so or last year, same time period. So no red flags there. The next document is our published budget halfway through the year compared to what we actually have used. And when I say we're halfway through the year, I want you to keep in mind that that doesn't mean we're halfway through expenses, because the largest majority of our expenses are teachers' salaries and benefits, which don't start till September. So really February is halfway through paying a majority of our staff. So percentage-wise, where we're at compared to the published budget, we're in good shape. So we'll keep monitoring this as we get closer to probably April, and depending on where we're at, we may have to amend our FY21 budget. And then the next page is our year-to-date revenues, and focusing the next 2 pages just on the general fund and where we're at with revenue collection, local sources, state sources, and federal sources. We did pick up some first quarter federal expenditure or revenues this since the last report, I believe, or actually compared to last year at this time. We're reporting that differently, so hopefully it's a better process. And then expenditures, again, percent of our budget compared to where we're at, about the same as where we were last year, so no red flags. I am including the last page, our unspent authorized budget. And if you remember, in the audit report, there is no concept of spending authority. But that is what drives our general fund budget in Iowa, is the concept of spending authority. So compared to where we're at, I can fairly confident that we're going to spend the authority that we're going to generate this year just based on our estimates there in yellow. And maybe, if everything goes according to our budget, we may eat into our unspent authorized budget a little bit, but nothing to be alarmed about, in my opinion. So anyway, that's December financials. Thank you.
What questions do you have for Tom?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. That takes us to our announcement and meetings portion, last piece on our agenda. And I have a little bit of a list, so here we go. February 10th, which will be Wednesday, there will be a 2-hour early dismissal for teacher professional development. February 15th, which I believe is a Monday, I'm not looking at my calendar, that is a no school for President's Day, so that is February 15th. February 16th takes us to where our junior high and our high school students will begin their in-person learning every day, face-to-face instruction. So that will be February 16th. Also on February 16th, we will have the Riverbend Mobile Food Pantry. That has been moved out a week. That was done, there's frigid temperatures. I don't know if anyone's noticed, it's a little chilly. Frigid temperatures have been, are forecasted for this week. So for the safety of those coming through the food bank and those working, we pushed that out a week. I hope it's warmer by then. So that'll be February 16th will be the Riverbend Mobile Food Pantry, and that will be at the Administration Center. And the time will be from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And then on February 22nd will be our next board meeting. That will be a special session and a work session. We'll begin at 6 p.m. and we'll be at the Administration Center. And we are so close on the home stretch, and I am so excited for all of our staff to think that there is news of being able to receive the vaccine on the horizon. We thank our public health team locally who has been working to coordinate that, and it sounds like watch your email for information on what's going to happen. And in the meantime, I would ask that you please remember the importance of masking. We are still masking in all of our buildings. The governor's decision statewide does not impact what we are doing locally. We will continue to mask. It is the right thing. It has made a big difference for our staff and students. So please continue to wear your mask. Gabriel, just for you. I'm with you, my friend. Wear it appropriately. Please cover that nose and chin. Social distance, wash your hands. If you're not feeling well, stay home. We are almost there. So I celebrate with our staff. And I would be remiss if I ended our meeting and did not mention that my good friend and vice president of the board, John, received a lovely award of the Palestinian Person of the Year, which is a really big deal. And I understand that normally you would go to receive the award, but because of COVID, you are not going to be doing that, and instead your brother is going to be receiving it on your behalf, which I am sure he will find to be a very special moment. Do you want to tell us just a brief bit about your award? Because I can't speak to it, I'm sure, like you can.
Well, first of all, Tammy, thank you, and thank you to all of you, but I wasn't really prepared to talk about that, but obviously, such award is makes me, first of all, honored and humbled to receive that on behalf of all the work that I'm involved with. And one of those works that I'm involved with is the school board, obviously, and the work that I have been involved with Muscatine School District for the past 5 years. So I always tell people I am who I am because of all my involvement and all the work that I do with all these great people such as you guys. So thank you. Thank you for that.
I didn't give you a heads up on purpose because I knew you would tell me no. So
Tammy,
did
just to expound a little bit on it, again, congratulations, John. I think that you sell yourself short a little bit. This is for the work that you've done with President Biden's foreign policy, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Mm-hmm. It's
and
part
this is,
of it.
and it's an award that's typically given to prime ministers in the world, correct? So, congratulations, sir. You, great work. Thank you for all you've done for us.
And on that note, I would does anyone else have any announcements for the good of the cause? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Toby
moved.
did. Oh, Mike did. And is there a second? Did I hear Toby second?
Second.
Danny did. Thank heavens. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. And the
Nay.
motion carries. Be well, my friends.